Is Veep an easy winner for Best Comedy Series this year, Charlie?
I'm sorry, my mind was elsewhere trying to think of a harder question to answer. It probably it probably is. When you look at, it's increased its nomination total again, 17 nominations, which
18.
is 18? Oh, okay, then which is just astronomical. Especially because comedy series usually those shows usually pale in comparison to the amount of nominations that the dramas will get. So to get to that level is unbelievable. It's in writing and directing, and if you were to look at those other, it's in several acting categories. The only thing that comes close to it is Atlanta and Silicon Valley, and Silicon Valley, has several writing and directing nominations, but I don't think it's gonna win comedy series, and I don't think that Atlanta is the real head scratcher here. I think there's definitely the audience for it, and I think there's definitely people who will be very passionate about it. But I think there will be that will probably be eclipsed by the amount of people that it just don't get it or just don't like it. So I am sticking with Veep.
And Tony, what are your thoughts?
I'm sticking with Veep for now. There's something about, we're starting to see, I've been reading several pieces on Gold Derby where, there's a seemingly growing chorus of people that are predicting Atlanta. And I think something that Charlie said really, I think applies here, and that is passionate. We haven't seen with this new system what happens when there's a show that has a smaller but maybe more passionate fan base. And in many ways, Atlanta sort of kind of reminds me of Arrested Development in terms of a smaller show that just really had captured the voters' fancy. Granted, that was under a tape system, and the circumstances were somewhat different, but there is a passion for Atlanta, as evidenced by all of its different victories at various guilds, TCA, Golden Globes, and if voters want to, and we know that Emmy voters don't necessarily care about being hip and with it, but there is certainly a, Atlanta is at a critical mass right now, and I'm so tempted to pick it just to be contrarian, and because it was my favorite show, and I have said many times on these things that it was my favorite show of the year. But is Veep probably going to win? Probably. Is it a lock? Absolutely not. Atlanta is a much more formidable challenger than we might think.
Amanda, Atlanta could win, right?
I don't think on paper it looks like the winner. The reason why I think is if you start dissecting the nominations of the show, and I think it only got 6, all but 2 of those revolve around Donald Glover. So the question I would pose for Atlanta is, are they going to give Donald Glover Best Comedy Series? And that's where I think it's going to get kind of hung up. I think a show that everyone should be paying a little bit more attention to is actually Master of None, because it increased its nominations. It got another actor in there. It got Angela Bassett. It has a few tech nominations. It's in casting. It's looking better than it did last year when it was just basically all Aziz Ansari. But right now, I'm going with Veep because I have no reason not to pick Veep. It's done nothing to show me that it's weakened in any way. And frankly, I think you have to remember, even though they are trying to expand the voting base, they might not get Atlanta. And Veep is right up their alley. And especially this year with all that politics going on, it would be really easy just to keep rewarding it.
What's actually interesting is I was just thinking it actually, this race is actually reminding me of the race for comedy series in 2009. when we basically assumed that 30 Rock was going to win a third consecutive one, but we were trying to be kind of mindful about the other ones that were nominated, and there was a nominee in there that did have a very passionate following, and that was Family Guy, and that was that real wild card in there. And some of us were talking about it possibly being a potential threat to win, which it's one of those times where it's one of those points where you're confused about whether or not you're actually believing in there's actually that it actually has a realistic shot, or are we just trying to create conflict where there is none?
I do think we have to put an asterisk next to Master of None because it came out so late. Like, I wonder, would it have gotten more nominations if voters had, a few more weeks to watch it? I'm actually going out on a limb here for Atlanta. I've been predicting Atlanta kind of all season long, and then it really disappointed me in its nomination total, but I am sticking with it until we get to the creative arts, and then whatever wins best casting, I will just say, oh, well, that's obviously going to win.
I love the passion vote from Riley. You never see it, so I'm like really enjoying it. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Like Atlanta, it's about young Black rappers. So it's not something that I would have thought that the Academy would go for. But once the industry kind of tells us what they like, I don't, like to question it, because like you can't, if it wins the Producers Guild Award for Best Comedy Series, and that goes to about 8 out of 10 Emmy winners, and then it wins the Writers Guild Award over several dramas, like it's telling us that the industry, their past hangups or I don't know, possible racism or whatever, it's not a factor as much right now. And
could it have aired at the right time though, Riley? Because I know it aired in like late fall, right before the guilds, right before the Golden Globes. It's kind of calmed down a little bit. Could that have helped it maybe?
Well, maybe, but it did still get the nominations that it got at the guilds, and then it added a couple more as well. Atlanta though, it's really struggling below the line. Like it didn't get editing, it didn't get sound mixing, even though it's about music. It didn't get music supervision. I feel like if you had Atlanta and Master of None together, then that would be the perfect show to take down Veep. And the reason why I'm not going with Veep this year is because I do think that there is a bit of fatigue with Veep. We certainly didn't see it in the nominations, but just, people don't seem to like this season nearly as much as the last few seasons. And
never hurt Modern Family.
Yeah, I was just about to say that. It
but
did not hurt Modern Family at all.
At a certain point, though, these shows do have to stop winning, like 30 Rock and Mad Men. And the years that those two shows stopped winning, they were still getting nominated in every category because they had kind of reached peak visibility within the Television Academy. So like everybody had 30 Rock and Mad Men in their top, 5 shows. So it was still able to get nominated everywhere, but it just didn't have, the passion to win at the end, which is more important now. If we were still under the old system, though, where voters had to rank their choices, I definitely would not predict Atlanta, because it's not as funny, and it's not everybody's going to get it.
Do you think that's could ultimately be what hurts it? It's not really funny. I mean, when you look back at the past winners, that is the one thing. That is the one thing they all have in common is that all of those shows are funny.
Yeah, I do think that like Orange is the New Black would have won a couple of years ago, though, if it was just check one instead of rank them. So.
Yeah, I just I want to predict Atlanta so badly, but I'm not yet until, because on paper this should seem like a slam dunk for Veep. I think the fact that it's we have this new voting system, I think the just checking off one helps Veep more than it helps Atlanta. Because Veep did so overperform in the nominations, and it could just kind of sweet mentality could go with that. But boy, there's just there's just something in my gut, and maybe just personal bias, but which is what I'm trying to figure out. But it just seems like there is something in the water where Donald Glover could conceivably there's a strong chance that he's going to win at least 2 of the 3 individual awards that he's nominated for. There's a strong chance that he could win comedy actor. It's I think Gold Derby is predicting him to at least to win in directing. There's an additional strong chance that he could win writing as well. First of all, to win all 3 of those, to even have a chance of winning all 3 of those, could he just take it all the way and they just say yes?
That's my hang up, is that they like ensemble shows. They like funny comedies. I don't have any evidence right now that this kind of auteur vision that is around, basically, that revolves around him for the most part, can win. And that's another problem. I mean, you could say 30 Rock, you could say Everybody Loves Raymond, but those were ensembles. And that goes back to my question. Are they willing to give Donald Glover Best Comedy Series? And I think the answer might be no.
I think all these awards are getting a lot cooler with their choices. Like last year, all those wins for kind of internet-friendly shows. And then also at the Oscars, where they went for, a gay Black drama over what should have been the biggest Oscar bait ever. They got tons more nominations than Moonlight. So.
You're talking about Manchester, right?
Yes.
Let's not talk about Moonlight.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's the plurality. That was the ranked vote. That wasn't a plurality vote. So how? Oh my goodness. So
and watch really the award go to Modern Family.
God help us. I think they could win their final season, maybe, but
it will never end.
It's ending at season 10, I think they said.
I'll believe it when I see it.
Now, what are you looking for in the creative arts that will impact your decision, or are you guys all set on Veep?
Prosthetic makeup is the one to watch out for this one. That's the one to keep your eye on.
Okay. Well, Walking Dead's going to win that. But I would say, who wins casting and how many of these awards does Veep win? Because if it loses casting but wins 6 others, I'm still gonna maybe go, we had lost casting, Riley, but it racked up a lot of Emmys. So I would say look for that, and then also just look for the few below the line categories the other ones are in.
I don't understand how we have categories like comedy production design, comedy cinematography, and still Veep and Silicon Valley are the only best comedy series nominated against a whole bunch of other random shows. Like, they should be, gimmies for shows that the Academy supposedly likes. So there's a chance that Veep is just way ahead here, and then Silicon Valley is obviously the second choice. Tony,
yeah, I agree with that. It's just kind of crazy to some of those below the line categories. But I don't want to overthink this one because I keep changing my drama idea like every other day. So,
any final thoughts, Tony?
I'm still not ready to predict Atlanta, but boy, do I want to.